What's up guys, this is LBT from Combat Culture, and today we've got a really cool video where we're going to cover a very important topic, and that's how to take care of your gear. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to cover is the piece of equipment that we probably use the most, and that's going to be our gloves. So when it comes to keeping our gloves clean, what I always recommend is that every time you're done using your gloves, wipe them down. Alright, even if you're wearing hand wraps, there's probably going to be a lot of moisture that's trapped inside, right? So what I like to do is I like to take some paper towels, just like that, right? Or whatever your gym has, whatever you got at home, you know, paper towels, towel, whatever you've got. Go ahead and just wipe it down inside, right? Get all the moisture out. And then once you're done, if you have a pair of glove dogs, it's like these guys right here, go ahead and throw them in, okay? These do a really good job at absorbing moisture, right? Or if you don't have glove dogs, go ahead and put some newspaper in there, or if not, an easy DIY, take an old pair of socks, clean pair, put some rice in there, wrap it on up on one end, and then throw that in there, right? That's gonna go a long way to help absorb moisture. It's gonna prevent this from stinking up, because believe me, if you don't clean it, and you let all that sweat accumulate in there, bacteria is gonna grow. There's no going back once it starts stinking up, okay? And if worse comes to worse, air it out when you're done, right? Leave these guys open, let it air out, moisture get out. The worst thing you can ever do is just let the moisture just grow in there. Bacteria, all that nasty, stinky stuff, you don't want that. The last thing about the gloves is whenever you're done using them, put the Velcro back on, right? What happens is if you leave the Velcro on or open, it's gonna warp over time. You know, it's always gonna fall off when you're training. I'm sure you guys have seen older gloves, right? Where you're fighting, you're sparring, hitting pads, whatever. The Velcro's all over the place, flapping all around. You always gotta put it back on. Do yourself a solid every time you're done using the gloves. Go ahead and Velcro these guys back on, right? And aside from that, you know, wipe them down, right? Just wipe them clean. Anytime you use this, a lot of dirt, sweat, oils accumulate, you know. I'd be careful using any kind of chemicals that are too harsh, right? So be sure you read, you know, the labels and instructions. Just make sure you don't put anything that's too harsh on these, okay? Another thing I've actually seen a couple of people do is they actually use boot warmers or boot dryers, I think is what it's called, right? I'll put an image on, you know, the screen right now for you guys to take a look. So basically how it works is that you would put both of your gloves on the boot dryer, turn it on up, it's gonna heat up the glove, therefore removing the moisture. All right guys, the next thing I'm gonna cover is gonna be the Shin Guards. These guys right here. So with Shin Guards, it's really important that you guys wipe these down after each use, right? What happens is when you put these on, these are usually pretty snug against your shins, right? If you've been sparring a couple of rounds, chances are it's built up a good amount of sweat. And also probably grime on the front, right? If you're actually kicking your target. So with that being said, every time I'm done using my Shin Guards, I always wipe it down as much as I can, right? Depending on what kind of Shin Guards you have, these Fairtex ones, over here, it's a pretty solid surface, right? So I don't think moisture really absorbs that much, but I do have a top pair of Kings, right, where I think it's fabric inside, so those absorb moisture really well. I don't know if it's well or bad, right? But that being said, with those I have to dry a little more than these, right? But nonetheless, every time you're done using your Shin Guards, always wipe them down, right? If they're still really wet or moist or whatever the case is, you know, lots of sweat on there, go ahead and leave it out in the sun and let it dry, okay? Aside from that, same thing with the gloves. Every time you're done using them, put the Velcro back on, right? Helps with the longevity. Takes like 5 seconds, you know, and then just put them away. So the next bit I'm going to go over is going to be equipment you guys use when you guys are training, right? So specifically tie pads, focus mitts, and belly pads, right? These are a little easier, you know, just every time you're done using them, I'd recommend just wiping them down, right? Because, you know, if you're training someone, chances are kicking, punching, getting oil, dirt, all that grime on here. So what you want to do is you want to dry these guys out, right? Once they're done, because a lot of grime gets on there. Paper towel, whatever you got, dry them out. If it's really grimy, go ahead and get a spray, maybe something like this that's specific for athletic gear, right? Spray it on down, wipe it up, put it somewhere, let it dry, right? Same thing with the focus mitts, okay? Now if you've got smaller focus mitts, I'd take some time, maybe dry out the inside, take a paper towel, right, put it in there. If you got some glove dogs, put it in there. Just like gloves, if you don't take care of these and they start stinking up in there, there's no going back, right? So make sure you guys take a little bit of time, just make sure it's dry in there, okay? With the belly pads, you know, if you guys are using belly pads, chances are you got people teeping, right? That's a lot of dirt, bottom of the foot, that's where all the dirt is. getting up on your belly pad. Okay, so what you want to do, same thing, wipe off all the dirt, right? Get a spray cleaner, spray it on up, wipe it down, dry it up. With the other side, if you're, you know, training without a shirt on, right? So might be chances that you get a lot of sweat on here. Just go ahead and dry it up as best you can, you know, just like the Shin Guards. Leave it out in the sun, let it dry, and afterwards, it's good to go again. All right, guys, so that covers the equipment portion. Now we're gonna get into the clothes portion, right? So the stuff we actually wear. So whenever I train, I usually train with Dri-Fits on, right? They do a better job at absorbing sweat. You know, cotton, what happens is once I start sweating, it gets really heavy. It's just uncomfortable for me to work with cotton on, right? So I typically work with Dri-Fits on. The thing with Dri-Fits though is that if you don't clean them right away, let them dry, they actually do hold on to the moisture, right? And all that bacteria from the sweat stinks a lot. So with that being said here, you know, I try to make it a priority whenever I get home to either dump this in a tub of water, a little bit of vinegar. That usually helps neutralizes the odor if there is some odor from the sweat, or I try to get to my laundry as soon as I can, right? Within the next couple of days. I try not to let it sit and let all that gross stuff grow on here, okay? Typically when I wash my Dri-Fits, I wash only cold water, warm water, and I hang these. Right, I've come to find that, you know, if I put them in a dryer, you know, they kind of go through them really quickly and they don't do that well, right? So I just hang them up, they dry within a day or so. So that's what I do with my Dri-Fits. Same thing if you got rash guards too, right? Just be careful with them. Throw them in the dryer. So tie shorts, pretty much the same thing, right? With my tie shorts, once I'm done with them, throw them in my hamper. You know, I try not to leave them in there for too long, right? They aren't as susceptible to odors as Dri-Fits. If you leave them on, you know, in the hamper long enough, it will grow. You know, I mean, the bacteria will grow, and you know, you get some odors on there, and you don't want that, right? When it comes to washing these, same thing. Wash it in the washing machine, cold water, warm water, just not hot. You know, after I'm done, I like to hang these up. I did have some when I first started training Muay Thai that I would throw into the dryer. What I come to find is that I actually went through these pretty quickly. Like the elastic would start breaking, all the designs on there would start tearing off, and all of a sudden I've got this really funky looking pair of shorts that, you know, ended up not wearing at all, right? So, you know, a little tip, whenever you're washing your Dri-Fits or you're washing your tie shorts, hang them up, air dry them, right? Save you electricity bill, and also takes about a day or so just to dry. All right, guys, I think I've reached to the point where we're gonna cover everyone's most hated part of taking care of our gear: hand wraps. Okay, so a couple of things about hand wraps. They do a really good job at absorbing sweat, which helps mitigate the amount of sweat that gets into our gloves, right? So kind of serves as a barrier. That's good. But if you don't take care of your hand wraps, these things, once they start stinking, no going back, right? I've definitely, you know, have had people borrow hand wraps of mine and give them back, and had to burn them, right? It's gross. So anyways, when you guys are done with using your hand wraps, right, obviously take them off, right? Once you get home, what I like to do is I like to take, you know, something like this. You know, this is called clear gear, deodorizes, disinfects, athletic gear, right? But I mean, there's other brands too, right? Find what works for you. You could do a mixture of water and vinegar as well. And what I like to do is I like to spray these down, right? Just spray down and go ahead and hang them up. If they're really, really bad, like say I had a really intense training session, right? They're just like sweaty, grimy, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to, like, you know, just spray it down and take off the smell. I try to wash them as soon as I can. So when it comes to washing our hand wraps, what I like to do is I like to toss them in a delicates bag. You can probably find these at, you know, most big box stores. I got mine on Amazon, right? Just toss them in there, let them wash. Reason being is so it doesn't get all over the place. Most importantly, they don't get all tangled up. It's nothing worse than pulling these out of the washing machine. They're all tangled up, right? You got to dry, this and that. And when it comes to actually rolling them up, not a good time, okay? So after washing my hand wraps, what I typically like to do is I like to hang them up. I've come to find that if I throw them in the dryer, they just tear apart over time, right? Whether it's the Velcro not working well anymore, or, you know, like the little strands just start ripping up, right? And the Velcro starts ripping up, and, you know, they just start breaking down over time, right? So, you know, just like all the other gear, what I come to find, you know, to help with the longevity is, you know, I air dry these afterwards, just hang up. It takes, again, about a day or two, you know, before they dry and they're ready to go again. So when it comes to rolling my hand wraps, one thing I'd like to recommend, and I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but it's one of these hand rollers, right? One of these guys right here. I'll put a link below. These things are lifesavers, okay? They actually made wrapping hand wraps not the worst thing in the world. Still sucks, but it's not the worst thing in the world, right? Definitely saves a lot of time, and these things are like 15, 20 bucks, right? And if you've got a ton of hand wraps, believe me, you'll be thankful you got these, right? You can thank your boy Albie for recommending these. So the next piece of equipment we're gonna go over is gonna be our mouth guard, right? So, you know, chances if you're sparring, you've got a mouth guard on. If you don't, you should get one. What I do after I'm done with this is I wash it with soap, right? Make sure you wash it thoroughly, get some soap on there, scrub it up, and then dry it, let it dry, okay? After it's dried, what I do is I put it in a container. I got this off Amazon. It's a Shock Doctor. It's made specifically for mouth guards, right? It's got a nice little ventilation hole. Throw it in there. Now, if you ain't got one of these, it's okay. Just make sure your mouth guard is dry, right? Once it's dry, go ahead and put it in a sandwich bag, right? Put it somewhere that's, away from everything else. I mean, you're putting this thing in your mouth. The last thing you want is all that nasty grime going into your mouth, okay? So, yeah, make sure you always clean these afterwards, okay? And the last thing we'll cover today might sound like a silly one. It's gonna be your flip-flops, right? If you're like me, you wear flip-flops on and off the mat, right? It's easier putting on my flip-flops than it is a pair of shoes. Thing is, you're taking your grimy ass foot off of the mat onto your flip-flops, chances are you're gonna accumulate a little bit of dirt and oil, right? So, I mean, do yourself a solid, time to time, maybe once a week, once every other week, just wipe these guys down. It doesn't take that long, you don't wanna bring all that nasty dirt on home. Or on the flip side, you don't wanna put these on, bring the nasty dirt that's accumulated on these guys onto the mat. So in closing, the main things to remember when it comes to taking care of your gear is to wipe it down after each time you use it, right? If you don't have time, you gotta go. At the very least, just try your best to put some paper towels in there, especially your gloves, right? To absorb the moisture. Okay, moisture is the last thing you want inside your gloves or focus mitts, because once you leave it in there, bacteria is gonna grow. Once it starts stinking, there's no going back. Believe me, I've had some gloves that stunk up, tried everything in the world, nothing. Right? Same thing with the other gear you use, right? If you have time, wipe off the dirt, wipe off the oil, wipe off the grime, right? It'll go a long way in helping with the longevity of the gear so you can keep using it over and over without having to invest in new gear. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys learned something new. If you guys did enjoy the video, hit the like and subscribe button. It goes a long way to help us out. We'll be trying our best to come out with more content as time goes on. But until then, keep training, stay healthy, be safe.